You are listening to the Body Charge podcast, and I'm your host, Sandy Sanderson. Welcome to the Body Charge podcast. Today's topic is proper digestion determines energy and metabolism. If you're suffering from chronic fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, or excess weight gain, irrespective of having a good diet and multiple nutritional supplements, it may be because of poor digestion. Food may be transiting your digestive system, but how much nutritional value is being absorbed into tissue cells on the interior of your body? That's the question. My special guest today is Reed Davis, a double board certified holistic health practitioner and certified nutritional therapist, an expert in functional lab testing and holistic lifestyle medicine. He's the founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition and the FDN Certification Course, with over 4,000 graduates in 50 countries. Reed is one of the authors of 4 books, including The Needs Gap, a simple guide to manage autoimmune disease and chronic pain. Wow, that's a lot to cover, and well done for all that good work. Heaven knows we need it in this day and age, especially in modern societies where a lot of our nutrition is highly processed and, GMO'd and, have chemicals and additives in that affect the gut microbiome. So there's a lot of interest out there now on how to do things better. So welcome aboard.
Thank you, Sandy. Good to be here.
My first question is, why do some people seem to have a cast iron stomach? They can digest anything, like a wide range of foods, while others have very sensitive digestive systems and suffer from gastric reflux or SIBO or irritable bowel syndrome from just a standard diet. What accounts for these differences?
Yeah, well, everyone's different, and there are different histories, and we all have sort of inborn problems with different foods that we might eat that might upset the apple cart, and so I don't think anyone knows the exact answer to that, but I happen to be one of the lucky ones. I guess I can eat anything, and it just seems to pass right through. So I think the transitory time is part of the issue because everything just sort of goes right through those people. Just because you have a cast iron stomach, by the way, doesn't mean you're perfectly healthy or that's a good thing. And then those people who are with much less, ability to eat wide variety of foods or spicy foods, for instance, or something like that. And they may actually indeed have a number of conditions or problems. I'm thinking right now of low stomach acid for one reason.
Yeah, which is connected with hypothyroid condition, isn't it? The
Well,
low
maybe not
stomach.
directly, but what my view is that there's a right diet for you, but it might not be the right diet for the next person. And we have testing. We have lots of tests. I teach a course in functional lab work as it applies to all natural drug-free solutions. So to answer that question, I would have to run some testing really. And there's some really good tests that you can actually do at home that are pretty cheap. And almost anyone can do them. So we test, not guess. And one of the biggest tests that I've had the most success with is the food sensitivity testing. So I can't really answer the question, cast iron stomach. I don't know that I even believe in that. I think some people just pass everything through so quickly they think they have a cast iron stomach.
Right. So
But
are
trust
they
me,
digesting properly? That's the question. If they're nothing wrong with their motility and the peristalsis and the gut, and they're evacuating uh, every day and they're regular, it still may mean that they may not be digesting properly or getting all the nutrition from the food. Is that what you're saying?
well, yeah, sure. I mean, digestion actually begins in the mouth with our saliva and chewing the food really well, and it goes down into the stomach where there's acid, and acid breaks it up quite a bit and sterilizes it. Acid can kill some of the parasites or bugs or worm, whatever happens to be on the food, some of the germs and things. But then, so that would be digestion, chewing, mixing the food with saliva, and it starts the enzymatic breakdown of the food. And when it goes into the stomach, you get the opposite from enzymes to you get the acid, and it turns the food into a certain type of liquid where then it can pass through. So true absorption of the nutrients doesn't happen in the stomach. So cast iron stomach doesn't really make any sense to
Yeah,
me.
it's just
The
an
nutrient,
old-fashioned saying.
yeah, the nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine through the villi, the
Yeah.
little finger-like projections there. And it's very interesting what's going on there with the bacteria. You got some good bacteria, some bad bacteria. That bacteria actually helps break down the food more, especially your proteins. So if you don't have good flora balance, the good to bad um, bacteria balance in the gut, which is the small intestine, I think that's where a lot of your problems
Yeah.
begin.
So are we supposed to have bacteria in the small intestine or a certain type? Um,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, so there's all kinds of beneficial bacteria in the small intestine that actually break down the protein. And so protein gets broken down into
yeah.
the amino acids. Then it can get absorbed properly through the villi, and it all goes into it's called the hepatic portal system, and into the liver from there. So that's in a normal situation. You've got good digestion. You've also got the bile from the pancreas, from the gallbladder. You've got uh,
To break down the fats.
yes, and lipase coming from the pancreas. It all gets mixed in the top of the small intestine there. It's actually pretty interesting.
And
The
how
anatomy,
does
physiology, biochemistry.
yeah, so the pH makes a big difference, doesn't it? So we need acidic pH for the stomach acid to do that part of the digestive work.
Yes.
And then, people tend to get reflux. And so on my readings, it's because there's not enough stomach acid, as you mentioned before, and it keeps churning and churning. So it's very slow to leave the stomach, but it needs to um, reach a certain pH when it to pass to the small intestine. Isn't that right? Because the small intestine's not supposed to have acidic pH. Is that right?
Yeah, it goes from more alkaline in the mouth with the enzymes and saliva is fairly alkaline to acid in the stomach, back to alkaline in the small intestine, and then actually in the bladder and in the large intestine it can turn back to acid. So there's a natural progression there,
Yeah.
and that's when everything's normal.
Yeah.
But
So when people
nobody
get
normal.
reflux,
I'm sorry.
sorry to interrupt, when people get reflux, what's happening in the stomach where the food's not passing to the next level and it builds gases and then it comes back up as a reflux, as acid reflux. What's happening in
Yeah.
that case?
My understanding, it comes from a book by Jonathan Wright, who ran the Tahoma Clinic here in the United States for decades. He wrote a book called Why Stomach Acid is Good for You. And it's a very revealing book for your listeners. Why Stomach Acid is Good for You by Jonathan Wright. And he said that we need very strong stomach acid. And you might think that's if you have acid reflux, you think, oh, that stomach acid's bad. And there's all kinds of medication and over the counter
Yeah,
you could
to
take to
try and
reduce
neutralize
that.
it. Yeah.
And that's a very wrong thing to do. You need that strong stomach acid, which actually increases when you eat because there's signals going from the brain and from the mouth, and so you're going to get very strong stomach acid on purpose to churn, like you said, churn. The actual term for the liquid that's left over is called chyme, CHYME.
Yes.
Now, when it reaches just the right consistency and we'll say pH levels, things
All
like that,
mushed up nicely.
all mushed up nicely. The pyloric valve will open up, and then it can go into the small intestine, where it's going to change the pH, and more. There's organisms in there as well. They're going to start helping to break down that food even further, so then it can be absorbed into the through the villi, and that's the true assimilation process. And so it's when it's properly prepared, it's going to come into the small intestine, be mixed with the lipase and the bile from the gallbladder and things like that, and they're called micellizing factors that come off the villi to help break down the fats and things. And you're going to then get this absorption. That's what you want, is the absorption of all the nutrients. We're talking proteins, fats, carbohydrates. We're talking vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, amino acids. We're talking about antioxidants, trace elements, phytonutrients. There's all this delicious, good food. Then all the nutrients supposed to come in and nourish our bodies. That's normal and natural. But in people with this is what I read in Jonathan Wright's book, and I've been going by it for many years. When people have, they don't chew their food properly. They're not really getting good, strong stomach acid. They might even be taking some kind of preparation to reduce their stomach acid, which is not a good thing. And
Or
as we get
maybe
older,
drinking water at the same time as
yeah,
you're eating can dilute the stomach acid. So when we drink water, it probably needs to be about half an hour before meals. Is that right? So
well, that would be
yeah,
good. Or after, not during.
not
That's
during.
the
Yeah.
point, to dilute the stomach acid so it gets to that right consistency and pH level, and then it can pass on. So it's actually when you have weak stomach acid, especially getting older and things like that, the little things
That
that
works
make
so well.
make acid. Yeah. So now when you have weak stomach acid and you don't chew your food properly, the food is going to go pass through it. It will eventually pass through into the small intestine anyway. And there it's going to start to break down in the wrong way.
Yeah.
So
If it
when
hasn't been
protein,
properly digested, is that right? If there's not enough stomach acid and it's partly digested,
yeah,
some of and maybe is it because the proteins become partly digested that the immune system is triggered because becomes a foreign protein getting into the wrong
well,
places?
before that happens, let's talk about that reflux and the question you asked, which was about the gas and things.
Yep.
So when food passes through into the small intestine, the environment there is different, and it's going to basically rot the food.
Yep.
It's instead of it being all properly broken down. Now, what happens to protein when it is breaking down improperly like that? It's called putrefaction. It putrefies, and putrefaction causes gas and acid.
Very
And
smelly
so-
gas. Mm.
yeah, and so now when fat breaks down improperly. It's called rancidification. It goes rancid. It
Mhm.
rancidifies. And with carbohydrates, like your vegetables or fruits or whatever you have, when that's being improperly broken down, it produces we call it fermentation.
Mhm.
So when you have fermentation, rancidification, and putrefaction of these food products, all of that produces gas and acid. Gas and acid. They're organic acids and gas. And so we get bloating. We don't feel good, and we have gas, whether it's you're burping back up or it's coming out the other end, you've
Yeah.
got gas and you've got this acid, but it's not stomach acid. And it
Mhm.
can regurgitate right up and can cause a lot of problems for people.
Yeah, and
So
it can give you ulcers too, can't it? Because the acids uh, eat away at the stomach lining or the intestinal lining.
Yeah, there's different types of ulcers. There are duodenal ulcers in the top of the small intestine, but those also can be contributed. And this is where you mentioned the immune system. If you have certain bacteria growing there, like H. pylori and things like that, it can get even worse. You can have even more of the ulcers and things like that. Now, I have to mention, I'm not a physician. I don't do any diagnosis or treatment of specific things like that. I just know a little bit about the anatomy and physiology and biochemistry involved so that we can guide people to chew your food properly. Make sure you have strong stomach acid. Matter of fact, it's one of the most common supplements that we have is digestive aids, right? So we have digestive support for older people or people with dysfunctional digestive systems, and hydrochloric acid could be a big part of that. along with the enzymes. I see a lot of supplements sitting behind you there. I imagine those are a lot of your minerals and things like that.
Well, everything's based on magnesium. So I'm the founder of Elektra Magnesium. So we make transdermal magnesium products, creams, lotions, sprays,
Wow.
which bypass the digestive system simply because there's a lot of problems digesting food and extracting all the minerals that we need for proper electrical functioning. So magnesium's our master mineral, and it's the mineral that we dump under stress. So we lose it excessively in the urine every time you have some kind of stress. So you need to put back into that magnesium bank account what's lost. And that's not happening enough today. People are scraping the bottom of the barrel with their magnesium resource because it's so easily lost. And the food supply being industrial farmed doesn't put the minerals back that we need. And the produce looks great on the outside, but it lacks a lot of taste. It's certainly not of the standard of organic, which then has our good full complement of nutrients that we need. And so transdermally, we're using the skin, the largest organ of the body, to absorb into that epidermal layer
Yeah.
a meal which doesn't need to be digested. But nevertheless, excuse me, we still need to eat good food. Everything is a holistic approach, it's a big package. So we need to eat according to our individual system. And, you know, a lot can go back to genetics. And sometimes these issues run in families, such as hypothyroidism, um, and also lifestyle practices. So we need to understand what works with our body. Some people may need like a very large amount of vegetables and very small protein. Some people need a little bit of a different balance according to their digestive capacity. So I read a book a number of decades ago by Harvey Diamond talking about food combining.
Mm.
And so he recommended, if you're getting reflux, not to eat protein together with a starch, such as potatoes. So no meat and potatoes in the same meal, but you can have potatoes with a vegetable meal, and have your meat or high density protein with a very light, watery vegetable like salad. And meat should not be consumed together with grains. So those with a sensitive stomach not producing enough stomach acid, or perhaps other enzymes from the pancreas. So, as you said, there are a number of factors coming in for digestion. So, if something's not right with that system, then food combining can help ease the issue a little bit, which is very interesting for me because that tells me if you're changing the foods that you combine, you're not confusing the stomach too much. It's not like bringing together too many different elements. So it's keeping it simple. You know, maybe just having two types of foods on the plate and not overspicing it, and, you know, keeping things very simple. If you're having a lot of discomfort, may ease the burden and assist that digestion. Have you found something similar in your experience?
I found something similar. Absolutely. Yeah. The simpler you keep it, the better sometimes. And of course, in today's world, we have so much variety. And here, we have in the middle of winter, you can get strawberries, or something like that. So probably we're not eating like our ancestors used to eat, which I think is a big part of eating correctly. We call it ancestral diet, which your ancestors, I'm talking 500 generations ago, like a long, that's what's bred into your bone. That's what's in your genetics. Genetic code hasn't changed in hundreds of generations for humans, whatever your genetics are. And so the problem with that idea of ancestral diet is knowing who your ancestors were, and with all the intermarriages and breeding and such, there's actually another way um, of determining that. You start with the fact that my ancestors were probably all from, Western Europe, kind of, England in these areas like that, and they had very specific ancestral diet. They ate a lot of meat, fat,
And
and not
dairy.
a lot of no grains at all, and very little. Maybe some wild this or that grain, but they didn't harvest anything. They weren't growing grains. They weren't sustaining themselves mostly on farmed foods. It was all hunting, gathering, things like that. Some fishing, of course. But so I do very well on that kind of diet.
Yeah.
But if
So
you gave that same diet to someone from South America whose ancestors ate potatoes all the time and corn, and they didn't eat a lot of meat, and so they wouldn't do well. Eskimos live on fat and very little bits of vegetable matter. Some seaweed and occasional seasonal, maybe
yeah, and
summertime
they get their
fruit.
vitamin D from that fat because they don't
Yeah.
get enough sunshine. So that's their alternative vitamin D source.
Right. But if you give that diet to, let's say, a Bantu native in Africa, that would kill them. They need a much more uh, local, the flora, the fauna that from that area.
Yep.
They do well on it. And I'll just tell you, my cousin was a priest up in Canada, and Christopher Davis, and his parishes were two Cree Indian villages. There were Cree Indians, so almost Eskimo, very northern Canada. They lived on caribou and salmon. Their natural diet was caribou, the reindeer kind of thing. And the herds are still enormous up there. Um, and fish in the water, whatever they could trap, hunt, things like that. There was no donuts, and so now with all of the um
No processed sugar.
yeah, processed sugar. Well, what happened was and by the way, during the early days of the development of Canada, the trapping and fur trade was the trade. That was why certain people went there. They wanted the furs to
Yeah.
dress up all the rich Europeans. And so they said the Cree Indian were very, very robust people. They were written about 200 years ago,
Yep.
how robust these Cree Indians were. They could just hunt and run over the rocks and streams and all day long, um, for dozens of hours in a day. So anyway, guess what? Now my cousin is two Cree Indian village parishes for his priesthood. Asked him one day, are they, what do they do when they're sick? Do they go to like a village witch doctor or something? Like, I wasn't even kidding. I was curious. He goes, well, I'm their witch doctor. I'm their priest. And he was joking, of course. But I said, no, seriously, if they get sick, what do they do? He goes, Reed, they're all sick. They're all sick. And they go to the government clinic and they get their medication, and they're basically on government sustenance, and the reason is they quit eating their native diet. I
Yes.
know that it took a long time to get to that point, but what happened was they started mining for copper and gold and different things, and so the mining companies would come in and they would bring workers from the south up, and they wanted their crappy food, and so the they shut down a lot of the trapping and hunting and fishing and things like that, and these people started eating wrong for their metabolic type,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so they
Well,
got sick.
there's a lot of study being done for the last 100 years. Particularly 100 years ago, Weston Price was a dentist and he did a lot of study into Indigenous tribes all around the world, including Australian Aboriginals. He went to Canada, Alaska, to Europe. He studied all the traditional diets from just nature, from the land. And he discovered that they were all very strong bone. They didn't have any caries in their teeth. That was what he was interested in because he was a dentist. They didn't develop any caries. They were very strong, physically strong, and robust physiology. But in one generation, from the introduction of white processed sugar and flour, in one generation, caries started to come into that system, and they started to change the skeletal structure, and they went from the wide jaw to a more narrow jaw. Everything changed in the body because of this mineral deficiency and change in diet to processed foods. So it's very, very interesting. We are what we eat, aren't we? And that
Yeah.
includes the microbiome that we accumulate comes from the food that we eat. So we culture that the whole digestive system needs to be cultured um, to function properly. And so when it comes off the rails, when it loses the culture, when the culture dies, you get things like the mucosal lining that starts to erode away and the villi flatten and they can't absorb the nutrients from the food that's eaten. And you can get conditions like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis and all sorts of inflammatory disorders all along the digestive system in the tubes and the linings because there's not enough mucosal protection left there. And we've lost the good microbiome, then the bad guys come in because they're opportunistic organisms and they keep chewing on us and eating us for lunch, I guess. So how do we turn this mess around?
Yeah, well, I have a 5-point health building system. It's called DRESS for Health Success, DRESS. And that stands for diet and rest, which includes sleep, but diet, rest, exercise, we all know that, uh, stress reduction, and supplementation. So diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. And we run lab testing to figure out what are the healing opportunities, what's wrong, and then how to fix it. You actually fix it by with the right diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. And you can fix almost anything going on. I'm not talking about super infectious diseases and things like that, but all the chronic downward spiraling degenerative chronic diseases of today, metabolic syndrome, all these things, that we brought that all on ourselves. And so if you've lived yourself into a health problem, you can probably live yourself out of it
I like
when
that
you know
expression,
when
live yourself.
live yourself out of you've lived yourself into these pre-diabetes and
Yeah.
obesity and chronic fatigue and all the things that are the most common complaints because I've studied them for 25 years now and found that if you do the right lab work, I believe in lab work, and I don't just believe in it. I teach a course in that, and it's
Yeah.
so interesting when you identify what's really wrong instead of just labeling the disease and treating that with pills and surgery and things like that. So yeah, it goes very deep into digestion and detoxification and energy production and nervous
So
system balance and the
in your,
hormones and the immune system and
yeah,
there's a lot going on there.
it's a
But
big web.
there's a lot going on, and I have a system of sorting it out. You know what I call it, Sandy? Sorting out metabolic chaos.
Yeah.
So I came up with this word or phrase,
Yeah.
metabolic chaos, and it's really what's going on.
Well,
There's no one thing.
t- it's like that web, instead of being well organized with everything connected and all the signals working in the body, the electrical system gets tangled like a bunch of tangled cords. And so you've developed a way to comb them out and reorganize them,
Yeah, it
which is,
took me a while. No, I worked in this clinic for 10 years. And when I worked there, my job was to run lab work and see how it matched up with the person. We call it clinical correlation. Because people were coming in our office, Sandy, and they didn't have a clue what was wrong with them. They just know they'd been told by one doctor it was one thing, by another doctor said it's something else. And it might have been true that both were going on, but they didn't want another diagnosis and pills. They wanted to know what's really wrong with me.
yeah, and
So,
practical
yeah,
steps to fix it. What can they physically do? To give me a plan. People just want to know the basics.
yeah.
And self-help. They want to be in control rather than having drugs
Or
or
they should be,
medications. Yeah.
or they should want to be in control. I ride motorcycles in the hills of Southern California, and I get a chance to get out there and think pretty clearly We're thinking about the people back at the office at the clinic where I work. I was really amazed how much control they were willing to give to other people,
Yeah.
like these practitioners who weren't helping them. And so they
Yeah.
would go from one practitioner to the next, looking for the person who would finally tell them what's wrong. So that I made that my job. I wanted to be the last person they ever needed to see. So I ran lab work. It was alternative lab work. It wasn't your
Yeah.
regular blood test. They've been told by their regular blood tests, oh, nothing's wrong with you. You're fine. But they knew there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So these alternative labs is what I specialized in.
That sounds great. Do you also use some natural health practitioners use the consistency of the feces to help the diagnosis as well? Is it more loose, like diarrhea? What's the color? What's the shape? There's even like a poo chart people use to determine what's going on, or perhaps what kind of bacteria you've got, or how everything's going in the gut. Do you use that or add that to your
There's all kinds of signs
system?
and symptoms from the body, and these are signals. They're not what's wrong, but they're a sign of something is wrong, and they're clues. So that's again why the lab work comes in. And yes, I'm very familiar with the consistency of stool being an indicator of what could be wrong, like floating light-colored stools
Yep.
are generally too much fat.
Yep.
So is it because you're eating too much fat or you're not able to break down fat?
Yep.
That's why you have to go upstream and figure it out there
Is it the
because
pancreas? Is it the liver? Yeah, many
yeah, a
things
lot
can
of
be.
time pancreatic insufficiency, poor bile flow, and things like that could contribute. So we we test, we try not to guess.
Well, I think that's what you're doing is fantastic work, and also
Thank you.
teaching other practitioners to do the same, how to get to the bottom of things and to the root cause using diagnostic criteria. And that's what you teach. So if people want to know more about that system, where would they go? What's your
They would
website?
go to, well, we have a website. It's FDN, which stands for Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. FDN Training, fdntraining.com/Sanderson. In your honor, we put that little
Yeah, that's
URL together. So
that's my husband's
FDN
fault.
training, thank you. They put that in your show notes,
Yeah,
fdntraining.com slash
I will.
Sanderson.
Yes, we'll put it under the
And
video.
yeah, we have a free gift for your listeners. They can go there and learn about the Dress for Health Success program if they want to.
It sounds fantastic. I think we all feel better when we digest food better, not only in the process of digesting. Of course, food should be a pleasure. It's really lovely to eat and feel calm and relaxed and perhaps in good company when you eat. We eat socially as well. But eating the right food, we need, I think, to be re-educated a lot in this modern society anyway. And to try and find, go back to the roots and of, where we've come from. What is our genetic hand-me-down? What kind of food or combination of food is best for our digestive system? It's a bit of trial and error sometimes, but it's good when people have a guide, such as what you provide, and
Yeah,
that
that's
will
right.
help them to be
I,
independent.
yes, ma'am. I understand the social aspects of eating and enjoy a good meal with friends and family and that kind of a thing too. But otherwise, you're really just putting fuel in the body. And we like it to taste good, but that's also sometimes how you get trapped into eating the wrong foods
Yeah,
because you get hooked on the flavor and you like it. I want to eat, I like that. Just like you say, steak and potato or potato chips. I love chips. But the idea is that doesn't matter to your body. It needs the nutrients, it needs the
yeah.
proteins, fats, carbohydrates, all the
We we
micronutrients.
need to make all the good food taste great. And I think you can retrain your body. I have. I don't like anything sweet anymore. To me, it's repulsive because I've
Yeah.
trained my body to eat different foods and it likes those foods. It gives me signals back with the thumbs up. Yes, I like this.
if you know what to look for, how you feel after a meal, maybe 2 hours later, is a big indicator. You should have good energy. You should be
Yep.
fully satiated, not be craving anything.
Yep.
And you should have a sense of joy, actually. Like you're going along with the good energy, and you're not craving, and you've got enough food to last until the next fuel stop. So you've got
Yep.
enough fuel to energize your body and go to the next time you have to eat. That's a good feeling.
Yes, it is. And we need to have a good relationship with food and not fear it. We just need to learn to drive that vehicle better so that the body's
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. Word to the wise on that is the cravings are telling you that something was missing
Yep.
from the previous meal. You should not have cravings.
Yep.
So if
Uh,
you're craving sweet, you're probably eating too much carbohydrate.
well,
And
the
so
sugars are sugar is actually addictive. It's a drug. So,
it's
you
just
know,
like a drug. Yeah.
yeah, come off that drug and your body will be much healthier, happier, and you'll live longer.
Word to the wise.
Thank you so much. We've got to go because it's finishing up soon. And I really must thank you so much because this is an
Thank you.
excellent topic. A lot of people will get a lot out of it, I'm sure.
Good topic. I hope so.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.
I hope you liked this conversation and will share it with others. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to listen to other Body Charge conversations, click like, subscribe, the bell icon, and click all notifications. Subscribe to our newsletter to get updates on blogs, podcasts, videos, and magnesium special offers at electromagnesium.com.au. Relax, recharge, and recover.